Did you expect a good video today? Because if you did, I'm so sorry. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you. Like, seriously, thank you. The whole support, I guess, the positive response to the Frog the Jam video was really cool. Much better than I ever could have expected. You know, I had the idea for it since like November of last year, and you know the video's been done for a bit, but I just didn't put it out because I thought, the audio quality is bad. You know, the video quality is kind of subpar, not what I want it to be. Some of the jokes didn't land. And yet it seems like it kind of worked out well, you know, especially the audio. Nobody really seemed to care about that at all or bring it up a lot. Anyways, with that, hopefully you enjoy this 90 minutes of me rambling about why bad cards are bad and you shouldn't play them. Like, seriously, just play Monster Reborn. Stop asking me to review these Red-Eyed Knight. I did this for you. Okay, this is going to be a weird one and probably a long one. So before I get into this, I just wanted to say welcome back to the frog stuff. I'm making this video because I've gotten a couple comments from particularly one user, Red Eye King, on my Frog the Jam deck profile, and he brought up a lot of very interesting choice cards of like, how come you don't use this? How come you don't do that? And like a button, like I think every single one of these cards except for like one or two he brought up. So I'm just I wanted to go over this mostly for like the deck theory, the building behind the Frog the Jam stuff, and that's kind of what I'd like to do here. I'm going to start off by saying a lot of these cards, they they exist, okay. And because of that, like I decided I'm trying to break this up into a few different sections. So the first section here is like Monster Reborn like cards, right? I don't know why this is here, but it is. Where it's just cards that like act as revival for your monsters, right? After that, I have like field spells and continuous spells. These are things that like work with water monsters or work with, well, mostly water monsters, but this also works with normal monsters. So I thought, oh, that might be something interesting worth talking about as well. Then I have these two draw cards. I'm not exactly sure where to place them compared to some others, but I'm just throwing them in here. After that, we've got searcher cards, except for that, this will come up later. These are cards that he brought up that do, well, they search your deck and they bring stuff out. Actually, what's it called? This is supposed to be up here with those. So all these are like searcher cards. After that, we've got a few traps that are just kind of like, oh, generic watery traps, right? Then we have these, I don't know how to describe these, but they exist. Then we have our recurrence cards. I think that these are them. No, it's just, wait, yeah, it's really just these two. We have spell removal-ish cards. We have weird burn cards. We have floodgates, and then we have super poly for this guy. And then a couple of interesting extra deck ready fusion targets to talk about. So I guess the first thing I would like to start with is the Monster Reborn cards. That's why they're out here. One of the key pieces for Frog the Jam is Tri-White, right? This is the card that kind of helps break the deck, right? Like here, all the cards that you really want for your Frog the Jam deck if you ever decide to play it. These are the pieces that make it super consistent for a deck that has 9 normal monsters in it. That's not how you spell enchanting. Enchanting, okay. So these are things that like you use them in my main decks, and I'll show the decks and the iterations of it from like its first concepts to like where it is right now. And these are all of mainstay of that. So like they're what I would say the best of the best in terms of making a somewhat competitive deck out of this super casual deck, which, let's be honest, the Frog the Jam, it's a casual deck. You're not playing this because you're winning anything or trying to win anything. You're playing because you're trying to have fun, right? So, these are just the cards that I like to use, and everything else here, I'm just going to use them to compare to this, right? First thing, Monster Reborn. Classic card, good card. One that I would highly recommend if you were like, man, I just want more Graveyard Revival. I'd say go for that. I don't feel like I need to talk about it that much more. Second, Odd Ice Revolution Dragon. There's another Monster Reborn effect, but it's also specifically can't pendulum summon other than dragons. You're not really going to pen summon in this deck, so that's right away just one thing that's not really going to be used for. This card's effect can't be negated. You target one Dragon Fusion Synchro or Xyz monster in your grave, destroy that card, and if you do special summon this, and then of course this is the effect that searches for another pendulum monster. So right off the bat, this has no synergy with anything in your Frog the Jam deck. You are not summoning out dragons, you are summoning out aqua monsters. I feel like, at least when this is brought up to me, the idea was, we can summon back Xyz monsters. That's pretty good. I mean, yeah, but they have to be dragons. That's kind of the key there. There's that other thing. You don't pendulum summon in this deck. If you did, I don't know. Maybe that could be used for that. But otherwise, you're not really going to have any reason to run this. So I just say not worth it. Second thing, Water of Life. If you control no monsters, target one monster in your graveyard, special summon it in attack position. Also, for the rest of your turn after this card resolves, you cannot activate monster effects except the effects of that special summoned monster. You can only use this once per turn. I'm going to put this down here. Let's get rid of these. And this is the zone we're going to call just bad cards, right? These are the cards that you actively do not want to run in this deck because you already have a hard enough time with 9 normal monsters, and you're probably going to draw 4 of them sometimes. This actively hurts your deck. So that's just automatic. Don't play it. Now, what's the reason for that? Number 1, you have to have no monsters on the field, so it can't even help you extend your combos for your deck. So that's automatically not worth running it. It doesn't do anything for you except for like on the clap bag. Second thing, it says that you can't activate any more monster effects except for that special summon monster. Once again, kind of kills any potential for combos. You can't really do much with that. You're actively hurting yourself to do something that already has a pretty big restriction on it for whether you even want to use it. So this feels bad, okay? This is bad card side deck, right? Okay, next thing. Service. Target a level 3 or lower fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster in your grave. Special summon it. This is not a bad card. And the reason, I guess this was brought up is because it has seen some play in, versions of Totally Awesome decks prior. Like, a few of these have done that, and I'll point to them when they come up. It's just, kind of generic Monster Reborn, at least in this deck, right? Because... other than your Link monsters and your Xyz monsters, this is a pretty good one as it goes to extending combos. It gets your frogs back online, and any other aqua monsters that you're running. So good card. I say it goes in the good card section. Swing of Memories. Target one normal monster in your grave, special summon it, but destroy it during the end phase. Interesting card. I'm not going to say that this is bad. Mostly because it's just, I guess, slightly nerfed version of Tri-White, or actually no, just mega nerf version of Tri-White, but it doesn't have any big restrictions on it. 9 of the cards in your grave are going to be normal monsters, so you know it has that going for it. But at the same time, why not just play Tri-White? Because Tri-White gets you 3 monsters instead of 1. So I feel like that's just not it's not a worthwhile trade. For 1 monster, it has to be a normal to get out. So you can't even revive any Lynx. You can't revive any Xyz monsters because, they're not normal. So anything other than that, I just don't feel like it's worth running over Tri-White. And even if you did want to bring one back, why not just go for a Monster Reborn, right? Or, if you want to run even more revival cards, let's just say you really want everything in your graveyard, why not just go for Surface? It does the same thing, but less restrictions. I mean, other than your Link monsters and other than your Xyz monsters, everything you're running is lower than level 3. Like, everything is a level 2. So this is just more... It works more. It happens more. I think that's the point that I'm trying to get to here. There are more situations when this will come up and, and do something than this, because this also has to do with, like, Swap Frog, Dupe Frog, anything like that you're running. You can get those back as well. So it just, instead of having 9 targets, now you have like 12 to 15 targets, right? So that's why I'd say that over that. And then this one, send 1 normal monster from your control to the grave, then target 1 monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it, and then equip this to it. I'm just, once again, why not do Monster Reborn? You don't have to tribute anything. It's not an equip, so if they get rid of the equip, it's going to stay on your side of the field. This is just, I guess, too many... it's got a cost. Let's put it that way. Whereas this has no cost. It could get you anything. If you don't have a water, but you have this in your hand, it's dead. Or, I'm sorry, if you don't have a normal monster, but you have this in your hand, it's dead. Whereas this, it's just free. You just need to get a monster in the grave. This is assuming that you even have stuff in the grave, which hopefully you will. But yeah, this is just kind of another, not that great thing, right? Second thing, Fateful Hour. So target 1 monster that cannot be normal summoned or set in either graveyard. Special summon it. Not the worst card, but it is a trap. Hey, and then that restriction of cannot be normal summoned or set kind of stings. I will say that. Like, obviously you're doing a lot of extra deck monster spamming, so I think you should be able to, use this to get those back. But even then, I don't know, could be better. You could use just Monster Reborn, do it during your turn. I know that Sprite Double Cross kind of works with your level 2s and your rank 2s, so you could just run 2 or 3 of those instead, because it also has other effects, like tucking things underneath your Xyz monsters, snatch stealing your opponent's monsters, and it also has this Monster Reborn effect. So it and it's not restricted to just special summonable monsters. It can work on anything, right? So that's why I would think that might be a better idea than this. And then once again, it's a trap. Why not use Monster Reborn? It does the same thing but quicker on your turn. And if you're going first, you want to do that on your turn. And if you're going second and you open up with that and then you set it and then your opponent, kills you the next turn, then that did nothing to help you, get to a better game state, I guess. Maybe if you're running something like, I don't know, paleo version of the deck, a trap version of the deck, that might work. Um, that actually might even be better in that case. Because, it would also proc off your paleo effects. And that's kind of the saving grace with some of these trap cards. But otherwise, it's just slightly too slow. Not a bad card, just too slow. Next thing. Deep Grave. This is going straight into the bad card list. See, the problem with this is traps are already slow. This is just even slower because it doesn't even activate right away. It targets something and either graveyard summons it back during your next standby phase. Maybe in an older format, this would do wonders, but at that same time, if you're in an older format and you want to do something like this in a deck that spans out aqua monsters and frogs, I mean, you could just Treeborn Frog it, I guess, for the same thing, to get that fodder on the field. But, of course, that's older format. That's inherent. You don't have to run this, and that doesn't target things in your opponent's grave. It's just, but it's still good. This is just like slow to another level. It takes way too long for even trap standards, so I just would not recommend that. Yeah, that's about it for that one. Okay, let's see. Target one monster that was destroyed by battle and sent to your graveyard this turn. Special summon it. Once again, not a terrible card, but just a card that this is better than that, because at the same, what happens if it's destroyed by card effect? Suddenly this card is just on your field and then it's dead, and you can't bring it back. So that's just kind of not good. I don't think I want to put it in the bad card zone, because once again, in older formats, there are plenty of things like battle traps that matter and they do stuff. I don't know if this is old enough to be played in those, but if it is, I mean, I don't see why this would be atrocious, just not optimal. But in current format, I guess this is just pretty bad, compared to other cards. Because once again, this does that without. This does the same effect without having to be destroyed by battle. So if it's destroyed by card effect, it works. So that's, if you want to go for one of these two, do that. But if you also don't want to run a trap and instead want to run something that's much quicker, we're going back to Monster Reborn. Just use Monster Reborn. Okay, Rope of Life. When a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, discard your entire hand, then target one monster, special summon it, and if you do, it gains 800 attack. Now, you might notice that there is a lot of the same things happening with a lot of these cards. They do stuff, but not optimally. Why would I want to discard my entire hand to bring one card back when, I could do it for free on my turn, or I could do it for free during my opponent's turn, and I don't have to get rid of my hand, And what happens if I have this set and my monsters get destroyed and I don't even have a hand? Suddenly that's not great. If I had things that I wanted to get in the graveyard from my hand, maybe that would work, but once again, at that point it's a bit too slow. It feels like you could just run other things to get those cards out of your hand. Swap Frog discards to special summon. It has a it can do stuff like that for you, for free, to also net you some advantage. This one just feels like, oh, let me summon back a guy, make him slightly buffer, give him no protection, and also destroy any follow-up I have for the next turn. This is just not... This guy's not good. Okay, let's go next one. Activate this card by targeting one monster your opponent controls, special summon it in defense position. It becomes worm type. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. Okay. Yeah. So, there's a couple things wrong with this in this particular deck, and I will explain that right now. Um, you want aqua type monsters, this turns them into worms. I feel like I don't need to say much more than that to explain why this isn't a great thing. So basically, if you summon back any aqua monster, it becomes a worm, so you can't go into Totally Awesome. And get this, if you summon back Totally Awesome with this, first off, it's got 0 defense, and it's summoned in defense position, so your opponent just needs to attack over it. Second off, it cannot tribute itself for its negate. So if you summon this back, you basically just summon back a defensive monster, and if you have nothing else, then that is, it just exists. It's basically turns a monster that's useful and really cool into something that does nothing for your deck. So this hinders your deck. Also, what you might recognize is that this is a continuous, so if they just get rid of this, they get rid of that. And if you want to play continuous, this is kind of the best continuous one that you can play. And I say that because the next card that I guess is going to be brought up in this category is Graceful Revival, which you target one level 2 or lower monster in the grave, special summon it in attack position. Then if this leaves the field, destroy that monster. A couple things wrong with this. Number one, it's level 2, so you can't summon back your Xyz monsters because they are ranks, not levels. That kind of stinks. If you have any Link monsters, you can't summon those back off of it. So once again, the only thing this does is summon back your frogs or your Frog the Jams or your normal aqua monsters. So it doesn't really do anything good for the deck. It just kind of exists. So why not play this instead? Because it has the same effect. You can summon it if it's a Link monster or if it's a Xyz monster, and you don't have to worry about things like that. And it's less limited than this. So just run this over this because this is better 100% of the time. This is going to the bad card list. Torrential Reborn. When a face of water monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, thank God it actually says card effect this time, and sent to the graveyard, special summon the monster destroyed, and send from the field to your graveyard at the same time. Wait, I misread that. I'm sorry. When it's destroyed and sent from the field to the grave, then inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each of those special summon monsters. This is kind of a cool card. Why is that? Because it doesn't just, deal with only the monsters that, just one monster. It deals with every single one of your monsters. So it's more than just one. It does some burn damage, which is nice. And I'm guessing because it's called Torrential Reborn, it works well with things like Torrential Tribute, which is kind of infamous for use in water decks, like Kairyu Control. Is that what it's called? Umi Control, which I guess we'll talk about Fish Sonar in a bit because that's kind of related. This can see some use. It can be searched out by things like Kairyu. So there are reasons to run it in a deck like that. In a deck like this, maybe not the best, mostly because if this happens, you can summon them back, but not any of your Link monsters. So if you have any of those out, they're gone. But if you have your Toads out and say your opponent just lightning storms you, calls monsters, you let it go, and then you activate this. Bam, you summon both your toads back, or three of them if you have three on the field somehow. Um, and bam, you just kind of go from there. Um, so yeah, this is good. Let's see. Wait, you know what? I'm sorry. No, I'm not gonna put that in bad. I'll just put it there. Okay. Gradle Slime Jr. This is another one of those cards that was used in older Totally Awesome decks. In this particular deck, I don't think he's the best, mostly because, you're running a whole bunch of. Ooh, excuse me. You're running a whole bunch of normal monsters, not really Gradle or anything like him. If you're running this with other like effect aqua monsters, I could see reason for playing him. I believe Swamp Frog could send a Gradle to the grave, then you can summon this, revive that Gradle, and summon one from hand, which isn't bad, in a deck that is, once again, very casual, like Frog the Jam, which, that's the nature of the deck. It's not terrible in that perspective. It does things for the deck if you can pull it off. It requires another Gradle in the grave to get the full use of its effect, and I guess this is kind of the most important part, but it requires a normal summon to get this effect. And I mean, if we're talking about normal summons in this deck, like the best normal summon you can get is Rescue Rabbit, because it banishes specials to Frog the Jams from the deck. There's no setup required for this one. This one requires some setup to get its full effect. This one doesn't, so that's why Rescue Rabbit will always be on my list of this is what I would do in this deck compared to Gradle. Maybe if I had more effect aqua monsters, he would be better. But in this case, I have all the normal monsters. Let me just run all the broken normal monster support I can. So Rescue Rabbit, that's the way I would go for that. Okay. Next thing, Umi. Standard thing. It's from the first set in the game, so it's not insanely good. It's not crazy. There are plenty of retrains. And any one of them can really suffice for this, except for Legendary Ocean, because that here, let me show this, because also counts as an Umi card. All the Umi retrains, you could use any one of these, just don't use this one if you do want to, because it reduces your monster's levels by 1, which means no Totally Awesome for you. I hate playing against Umi control with this deck because this card exists, and it makes me very sad. So if you wanted to do a field spell, I don't know, just pick one of them. But then again, I just wouldn't do a field spell to begin with, mostly because not everything you control is going to be a water or a fish, sea serpent, thunder, or aqua monster. It's just you have more than that in your deck, so this isn't going to help everything. It's not going to actually do an incredible amount of work for your deck. It just only does stuff for your toads and your frogs and your normal monsters, so that's why I wouldn't use that. Umarika, kind of the same thing, a bit more attack, less defense. Doesn't matter in a deck Totally Awesome where you're summoning it in attack all the time. That being said, once again, I'm not sure if I would run either of these or any of the retrains of this. The only reason I would, and this is actually a pretty interesting reason that I would like to bring up, is the use of Fish Sonar. Because if you have Umi on the field, you can summon out one of your Totally Awesomes, or not Totally Awesomes, but one of your Frog the Jams for free. As well as getting one to hand. That's not a bad effect. That's actually pretty good. That's one of the most broken effects for this card in any Umi control deck, because you can just summon out Giga Gigo, the Risen, or Giga, I don't know how to pronounce their names properly. And because of Legendary Ocean that you would have in that deck, it'd be a level 4, so you could do like Bahamut Shark into Toad shenanigans. Um, but of course, in a deck that already makes Toad, why would you need to do that? Also, like, this is just more main deck space that's taken up for both of these, to get this to do its full effect. So it just doesn't feel like you want to do that. Also, like, you tend to want to have your normal monsters in deck for another card, that Enchanting Fitting Room, which I'll talk about in a bit here. But that's mainly why I wouldn't run this package. It's just too much main deck space that could be used for something like more engine related, or if you want to go like hand traps and stuff, that would probably be better in my opinion. Next thing, Piercing the Darkness. So this is one that I brought up. This was not brought up by Red Eye King, who once again brought all these cards to my attention. But when I initially made this deck, this was one that I was kind of testing out for a couple reasons. Up to this point, I think most of these cards that I've talked about here deal with water monsters, or like, level 2 monsters. This has to deal with normal monsters though. And it does a few things for the deck that are worth bringing up. Mostly, if you normal or special a normal monster, you draw 1 card. Then if an attack is declared involving an opponent's monster and a monster you control that is level 5 or higher normal monster, which you don't have, or was ritual summoned using a normal monster, or fusion, synchro, or Xyz summoned using a normal monster's material, you can make that monster gain attack equal to the opponent's monster attack. Basically, it helps you get over towers. It helps you get over big bunguses, stuff like that. So, like, not a terrible card. If you're going to run any of the continuous cards I bring up here, I'd say this is the one that has my vote. I think that it's kind of spicy. It's kind of silly. It's not the best. Obviously, I wasn't running it when I made my first video for this channel. But it's one that, like, I kind of like trying out when it comes up. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if I tried it out again. It's just one of those things. Aquarium Stage. This and I believe Aquarium Set and Wetlands all kind of just do similar stuff. I think that that it doesn't really help the deck out too much. Like, actually, what's it called? They protect your aqua monsters and your water monsters and stuff like that, right? Which is not bad. Like, I believe that this protects them from being they're unaffected by your opponent's monster effects, which is really good. Because if they try to lightning storm you or dark ruler you, nothing happens. That's pretty good. I would say, hey, if you just want to go into the water aspect of this deck, use this. It's really, really good. One problem though, it locks you into aqua monsters. So, no link climbing, no sprite shenanigans, no anything like that, no rescue, or maybe rescue rabbit later on, but it doesn't matter if you rescue rabbit first and then summon this out, then you're good, but otherwise it just, once again, it only does stuff for the water monsters in your deck, not anything else, and you have more than just water monsters. It's just that the water monsters, aqua monsters that you have are they're the main focus of the deck. They're not the only focus of the deck. You want cards that help everything in your deck, because you're inherently at a disadvantage because you're playing this deck. That once it, dumb deck. It's a dumb deck. I love it, but it's dumb. It's not great either. So you want to play good stuff to compensate for the fact that you have a lot of not great stuff in there. So these, not my favorite. Wetlands, very, very spicy. If I were to play any field spell, it'd be this one, mostly because it just turns Totally Awesome into a 34 Bungus. Um, I think last of the... no, there's two more left here. Okay. Water Hazard, not my favorite, mostly just because you need to see it in your opening hand and you want to go first to get a special summon out. Um, but at the same time, why would you do that to summon something out from hand when you can just Unexpected Die summon from deck? Because Unexpected Die is not once per turn, so if it gets ashed and you have two, you can summon it out again. It also requires no monsters on the field, and it's infinitely better because it gets you something from deck. This is just, you need it in hand. You need a water in hand, which you're going to see a lot of, but like, I don't know what happens if you draw this and then you draw like 3 enchanting rooms and an Unexpected Die. What do you do here? You do nothing, because this is just kind of a dead card in your hand. It's not gonna do anything for you. So that's why, like, I would not recommend this. But if you're like, oh, Ash is such a big problem and I always draw my water monsters, I mean, sure, try this over Unexpected Die. If you have success with it, go for it. Okay, next card. Yeah. Okay. Send this card to the grave during your opponent's third end phase after the activation. Water monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. I'm going to say it again, way too slow, but this is like slow as slow can be, like ever. Holy cow. I don't even know if this would see much play in like older formats, just because it takes so long to resolve. And games back then, I guess, kind of went on for longer than now, but why would you run this now if that's the case? If things have gotten to the point where opponents can, take down your life points all in one turn. This does nothing for your deck that you can't do already, at least in terms of like finishing off the game. It just kind of exists. If you draw it, you activate it, and it's never going to resolve. So there's not really a reason to run this. So I wouldn't. I think it's just very, very, very bad card. So yeah, it belongs down here. Next things. Moray of Greed and Avarice of Greed. So I have both these in here because they both kind of do similar things, which is if you have a water deck, draw 2. That being said, one of these is definitely better in this deck than the other, and it is Moray of Greed. And this is for a few reasons. To start off with, let's, I guess, talk about Avarice. So Avarice, it banishes a fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster you control, and then you draw 2 cards. Drawing 2, it's nice. It definitely is. But the thing is, in this deck, you either want your normal monsters on the field for link material, or you want them in the grave to summon out for... you want them in the grave to summon out with Tri-White, but if you have neither of those, you don't want them in your hand, you want them in your deck. If you do this, you just normal summon, banish it to draw, like normal summon Frog the Jam, banish it to draw 2. Oh my goodness, it's more normal monsters that I now can't summon because I already did my normal summon. That's not great. In fact, that feels pretty bad. So I wouldn't recommend this in this deck. Other decks like Goaty, I think, can abuse this better and actually get effects that procced off because of this. So, just stay away from this one. Go with this one. Because if you have a bunch of normal monsters in your hand, just put 2 back, draw 2. You might get the same cards, but more than likely you're going to get other cards that help you extend and further your plays. It's draw 3. Yeah, so basically it's just redo your hand. That's all that this card does, and that is so good, like so good. if you end up having like only one or one water monster in your hand, that stinks. That kind of makes this useless, which is understandable. Maybe you could do some swap frog shenanigans to get two water monsters into your hand. But otherwise, those are, that's really the only situation where I'd find this to be a bad card, is if you have only one or no water monsters in your hand. But if that's the case, you already have gas to get through all your plays, because you want all your normal monsters in the deck. If they're all in the deck, what do you have in your hand? If you have none of those, you probably have Enchanting Fitting Room, you have Tri-White, you have Unexpected Die, Rescue Rabbit. You have all these cards that do stuff. And if you have none of those in your hand and only this and a bunch of normal monsters, you just shuffle them back and draw 3. This is a great card. I would highly recommend playing this. And as we go, I guess, into the decks that I have here, I'll show more of that and why, why to do that. It's good. So yeah, between these, greed over avarice. That's what I would say. Next thing, Mimiclay. This is kind of like Unexpected Die. Like, this is what I'll say. These two right here are kind of like the Unexpected Die cards, and these 3 are other searchers for the deck. The only thing about all of these is that they're just worse versions of that. Because Mimiclay, it does 2 things. So first off, it targets a monster that you control in defense position. Now, you're not usually going to have your normal monsters in defense position, except for if you Unexpected Die or Rescue Rabbit to get them in defense position. But, at that point, what happens if you normal summon? And that's the only thing you could do. What would you rather have, this or Unexpected Die in your hand? That way you can die into one monster, normal summon your other, and go into Totally Awesome. Or would you rather normal and then have this dead card, right? And that's if you go second, because the other thing is that your opponent needs to control a monster in order to activate this. So it's got more restrictions than you really want for this to even get things done. So there's no real reason to run this to begin with. Unexpected Die is just a better version of this card. It doesn't require a monster on the field in defense position in order to use it. It's great ash bait. It helps you get your play started, where this one, it requires your opponent to already have a board in order to activate. So that's why I wouldn't use that. I'm not going to put him in the bad card section, but he's just not great. Fish Sonar, I was talking about this earlier. If you have Umi on the field, this is like an insanely good card. The only thing is that there's no real reason to run Umi in this deck, because it takes up a lot of extra, it takes up a lot of main deck space to get its full effect off. And that being said, here's another thing. This searches out normal water monsters. You can't search out Swat Frog. You can't search out Dupe Frog. You can't do any of those things with this. You can only summon, Ocean Control Umi monsters, I guess, or normal monsters. But you want those in the deck because of Enchanting Fitting Room. So it gets you a search for a normal monster that you want in your deck, unless you have Umi, in which case it summons one out and this gets your play started. But you're not always going to see Umi. This isn't in Umi deck. This is like, let's get as many normal monsters on the field and go into some cool boss monsters kind of deck. So this, this isn't great for that. So I wouldn't recommend that. Next thing, Packet Link. During the main phase 2, special summon any number of monsters level 2 or lower with different names from your deck, hand, and or grave to zones link monsters point to. This is a slow card again, but it's also a main phase 2 card, which kind of stinks. If this was like, oh, main phase 1 as well, maybe I can, get by with that. That makes sense. But it's really slow. And what happens if you could only manage to get into like one toad, or you got into two toads, but like your link monsters get blown up, or you don't have anything that you like the zones that the link arrows point to are already filled. That's not great. Also, you have to wait until after the battle phase in order to do this, so it's bad. It feels bad. um, I feel like this belongs down in this section here, the bad monster, the bad card section, right? Next one, another Searcher from deck. Once again, this is kind of slow, and this one has to deal with normal monsters only, level 2 normal monsters. So that's why the Ojamas are there. I've seen interesting things like Ojama Sprite happening. There was a guy who went to locals at the same time I was running this deck, and he was doing Ojama Sprite, and I was like, dang, that is so cool. I think he was running this because it actually works for his deck. Not so much in this one, because you want your normal monsters to be used as materials. You're not going to keep them on the field, especially if like you Rescue Rabbit to summon them out. They're getting sent to the grave at the end anyways. If you have a normal monster on the field when your play is done, that's not great. That's not great. That's just not great. You don't want that to be the case. And even if you do, you're probably not going to have all of them in deck anymore if you manage to go through your full play. So basically, this is just either you failed your play completely. I guess I'll summon 2 out, which maybe for defensive purposes, or you went through your whole play, but now you have this in your hand, and it's just kind of a dead card. Why not have something like Imperm, or a Chalice, or some good spell or trap that you can use instead. So that's why I wouldn't recommend this. Mother Grizzly. This is a classic card. Mystic Tomato, UFO Turtle, Shining Angel, all of those classic recruiter cards. Main problem with this one is it needs to be destroyed by battle in order to get its effect. So maybe if you're in an older format, that makes sense. That would be worth playing and doing. But if you're playing an older format, there's not really a huge reason to run Mother Grizzly. Or not Mother Grizzly, but like Frog the Jam, because there's nothing to do with him. He just exists. And there's no like swap frogs at the time that this was seeing its main form of use. There are no like serious frog archetype at that point, so there's no reason to do that. Totally Awesome wasn't out. Link Monsters weren't out. Most of the cards in the deck that is Frog the Jam were not out. And those all surpass this card right now. It's just too slow. It only works if it's destroyed by battle, and it summons things in attack. I'm going to say this right now. If you summon a 700 attack monster in attack position, your opponent has like a Geomathmic Final Sigma in their extra monster zone, you're kind of screwed, because they're just going to attack you for like 6,000-ish damage, and that's going to feel pretty bad. So, not the best card. Very interesting, just wouldn't run it in this deck. Same thing here with Neo Space Aqua Dolphin. This was just another one that was kind of brought up in the list of cards in the description. You don't really have a way to get this out in this deck other than taking up your normal summon, and if you do that, once again, Rescue Rabbit is just better because it gets you a 2 monsters to go into an Omni Negate. This is just, you discard a card, you rip a card from your opponent's hand. I guess. But which isn't a bad effect. I'm not going to say that this is even close to a bad effect. It's a really good one, actually. It just not. You're not going to get into this nearly that often in this deck compared to something like Heroes or Branded, which can, pretty much just go fusion deployment into this, rip a card from your opponent's hand, and then, continue playing the game. So, not my favorite card in this deck, but a good card. So I will say that good card. Okay, so these are kind of just like interesting trap cards. I think, yeah, let's start with this. So this is a tribute one water monster. Look at your opponent's hand, send one card from their hand to the grave. It's kind of the same as Aqua Dolphin. The only difference is that this is a trap and you need to tribute a monster from your field. This kind of once again goes into the fact that you don't really want to leave water monsters on your field that weren't tributed. Or used for link climbing or Exe summoning, because what's better, tributing a monster you control to discard a card, or negating and stealing several cards from your opponent so that you can use them? Totally Awesome is something that I want to prioritize on my list of these are cards I want to get into. A rip from hand isn't gonna stop everything. It could stop everything though. If they have a lava golem, that might, help you stop their plays. Actually, now that I'm thinking of this, this isn't a terrible card. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking because okay, I changed my mind completely about this card. This might actually be kind of sauce. Yeah, because Totally Awesome. During the standby phase, summon out a Swap Frog or a Dupe Frog. Activate this. Tribute that card. Rip a card out of your opponent's hand. You can do some very silly stuff with this. I have changed my mind completely in the span of a couple seconds. This is a good card. I might actually try using this in the deck. Okay, that's good. Next, Ice Barrier. This is pretty cool because it negates attacks, it changes monsters' attacks to 0, then negates their effects without targeting, i.e., if they have a Dragoon type thing that can't be targeted and they try to attack you for game, you just activate this, make the attack 0. You're good. Also, if you're running kaijus in your deck, you can then banish this from grave, send a kaiju to the grave, and then add any water monster back to your hand from the grave, i.e., add that kaiju back for follow-up. Also want to say that, what's it called? Let me see. Wait, I'm sorry. I need to put this over here. So I need to read everything. The only thing that would be a drawback for this deck is you can't summon other than special summon monsters the turn after you activate the add to hand effect, which kind of stinks. But at the point that lock happens, oh wait, no, this happens until that point. Okay, never mind. I don't know. Either way, this gets you Gamma Seal. Kaijus are kind of broken right now. And at the point that you use this, you might already be winning or you might already be losing. I'm not sure what to say about it, but it's not a terrible card. It has its uses, its effects. It can be used in I guess paleo versions of the deck. So I don't know, this is worth experimenting with. I think it's a pretty good card. Next, the Icebound God. If you have 2 or more water monsters on the field, target one face-up monster your opponent controls. That face-up monster cannot attack. Also, its effects are negated. If you have a level 5 or higher water monster is normal or special to your field while this is in the grave, blah, 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 set this card. Once again, not terrible card, but at the same time, you could just run Ice Barrier because it basically does the same thing. If you Ice Barrier a monster, make its attack 0, you can do that during damage step. Most card effects don't go off during the damage step. That's a weird ruling that has been kind of I guess, exploited with some other cards more recently. But the fact that you can do there is pretty good. And if you do that, I mean, are they going to attack with a 0 attack monster? Not really. So it kind of stops them from attacking to begin with. It negates the effects also without targeting. Like this targets, but this doesn't. So like this is better than that. And they kind of fill the same role. But this also searches out a kaiju afterward. So if they have another big problem monster, you can just do that instead. Or you can do that after the fact. Whereas this, it only has one kind of situation. It requires 2 monsters on the field. It has more setup required than this. So this over that. That's what I say. Okay. These next 2 cards I really, really, really wanted to talk about this entire time because I have no idea if these are win more cards or if you like. I don't know if these are cards that you play when you are in a game winning state or cards that you play when you're in a game losing state because holy cow. Pride of the week is if you have a level 2 or lower monster and it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, send it to the grave. If you have no cards and then if you have no cards in your hand, you draw 2 cards. Oh wait, fuck. I did not say that right. But basically, if you destroy a monster by battle, you draw 2, which is really cool. And when paired up with this, which is an equip spell that you equip to a level 3 or lower water monster, your opponent will then also discard a card. So basically, you draw 2, they discard 1. That's really cool. The one problem is, how on earth are you ever going to get a level 2 monster big enough to attack over a monster for battle? Like that just does not happen. It doesn't happen. But I really want it to happen. Like I think these cards are awesome. Holy cow. You're never going to be able to pull this off in any like situation, but if you do, like there's no need to play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. You've already won. I don't know. I really like them. I think they're very silly, but they're just not. They're not worth playing unless you want to pull off exactly that combo. Which, if you do it, tops to you, man. But yeah. Next things. These. I kind of talked about this before. All these 2 are recycling cards. I'll just put them down like that, right? This one, salvage, it's a classic. Target 2 with 1500 or less attacking your grave, add to hand. Pretty good for getting some of your guys back. I don't think there's too much to say about that. If Ronin Toten was still in the game, I'd say this would be a much better card in this deck. I think there are better water decks that can use this though, to higher effect. So that's what I would say for that. Aquamirror is kind of just a worse version of this, mostly because you need a monster on field in order to activate it, and you shuffle that monster back to then add the 2 monsters engraved to hand. The only difference is that these monsters don't have to have 1500 or less attack. They just can be any water monsters. They can be your extra deck monsters, like Totally Awesomes, if you don't have any more. So like there is some use from there. It's just removing one of your cards from field in order to get that effect isn't the greatest. But it helps recycle. It's not terrible. It's just not good. Between these 2, I'd recommend this because once again, it's a spell, so it's quicker. It activates faster than this, but also has less restrictions than this. So I'd say that if you were to choose between either of these. Okay, this one. If you control water monster, target 1 spell in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and if you do, for the rest of the turn, negate all spell effects on your opponent's field. this is kind of cool. I'll be honest. In a format where there are a bunch of power spells, like this, honestly, would be kind of a spicy card to play. The only problem is that it targets a card in the graveyard, a spell in the graveyard beforehand in order to do the effect. You need a water monster on field in order to do the effect, um, which isn't a great thing. And, in this current format, typically if they have used a spell, it's either terraforming, in which case you win because they get their search and then you negate you banish the terraforming and they can't do anything, and that's pretty great. Or they already have the starter in their hand, so there's no this does nothing. They already have their full combo. Um, that's why I would say not amazing right now. Maybe in more spell heavy formats it'd be great. In a deck like against a deck like Sky Striker, this would also be great because it's basically just a bajillion spells and 4 monsters. So I could see it having some use there, but otherwise not currently a good card right now. Maybe in the future. In this deck specifically. And that's all I'd say to that. Sealing Ceremony of Sutan. So once per turn, you can send 1 water monster from your hand to the grave, then target 1 card on your opponent's in your opponent's grave and banish that target. So this is interesting, but at this, it's basically just like a DD Crow effect. The big downside, though, is that, of course, it's a trap. So once again, it's slow. And you could just run DD Crow instead to target and banish a card in your opponent's grave to do the same thing, but you also don't have to set this up and have a water monster in your hand. It's just more use there, I'd say. That's really it to this. If you manage to go first all the time and you have this in your hand and you have plenty of water monsters in your hand, instead of using them to link, climb, combo, all that stuff, I mean, I guess you could use this, but you should just DD Crow. That's so much better. Contact with the Aquamere. Finally, a spell again. So this is interesting. I think it's supposed to be used with Gishki, because if you control water monster, you can activate one of these effects, but if it's a water ritual monster, you can activate both of these effects, which is you can either look at the set spells your opponent controls, or you can look at the top 2 cards of either deck and put them on top in any order. This does nothing. This might give you some information on what your opponent's running if it's an all trap deck, but at the same time, why not just run Harpy's Feather Duster, or run Lightning Storm, or Cosmic Cyclone, or any good card that deals with them on their own instead of looking at them beforehand. And what happens if you run this and then your opponent sets nothing and they only have continuous face-up spells and traps? Then this is kind of just a dead card in your hand. You can look at the top 2 cards of either player's deck, but that's it. You don't get to do anything with those things. You need a water monster on the field. I just don't see why this is insane. This is something that you would want to run over cards that would actually do stuff for helping you play the deck, instead of focusing on what deck your opponent is playing. You're saying, what can I do with what I have, instead of seeing 2 random cards that might not even, they could be 2 hand traps, and then you'd be like, oh dang, I still don't know what my opponent's playing, but at least I know that there are 2 hand traps, and then you don't know how to play around anything, because that's it. That's all you got. It's just, you could do better things than this. I'm not going to say it's a bad card, but it's just not once again, it's not a good card. Like, that's an overarching theme with a lot of this stuff. They're not terrible cards. They're just not good cards. Next thing, Diamond Dust, Destroy. Okay, I'm just gonna put these two down here right now. These two are just weird burn cards for water monsters, and I think that they're just bad. They're just bad. I'm gonna say it here. So this one, destroy as many water monsters on the field as possible, then inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each water monster destroyed and sent to the grave by this effect. Two things. Number one, if you have 5 water monsters on the field, max 6, like let's say one is a link monster, right? You have 6 here. You'll do 3,000 damage by getting rid of your entire board. Why would you, or not 6,000, 3,000. I think I said that. I hope I did. Doesn't matter. Sure, that's 3,000 damage, but you also got rid of your entire board. If you had toads on the field, they can no longer omni negate, right? They're gone. If you had like a dupe frog to protect your monsters from battle, that's gone. Sure, you'll do some damage, but like unless they have exactly 3,000 damage and you have 6 on the field, like water monsters on the field, you're not doing anything. And if they have like 500, yeah, sure, this is great, but there's no reason to do this. Other than to do like silly burn tactics, but like this, what's it called? It's just so much disadvantage to not even like finish out the game. It actively hinders your deck. It's a bad card. Just don't play this. Torpedo Takedown. This is kind of similar-ish. It's not as bad as Diamond Dust, but what it is like you detach a material from water Xyz you control to inflict 400 damage to your opponent for each card in their hand. And then your monster gains attack until the end of the turn. So if you're going second and you manage to pull this off, like you're already in a game-winning state because they had nothing to stop this. You managed to get a Xyz monster on the field, and they must have had a lot of cards in their hand which were dead, to give it a lot of attack. But usually that's not always going to be the case. The cards that they'll have in their hand are like hand traps or follow-up. So like they'll have 1 or 2 cards at most by the end of the turn. All your resources, like all their resources, would already need to be expended in order to not deal with this. And even then, like they could just get rid of your Xyz monster, beforehand. In which case, like this does nothing for you. Now it does have a draw 2 at the end, like in a separate effect, but you can't even activate it during the same turn. And it gets rid of your water Xyz monster that you used, i.e. Totally Awesome. And you want to recur Totally Awesome. That's part of the draw for Toad. He keeps coming back. He keeps putting himself back. He keeps giving you resources. So what would you do? Would you rather banish your boss monster in order to get 2 more cards, or would you rather mystery cards, or find something that could just bring that back? In my opinion, I'd rather just find a way to bring him back because I like that having something that I know will happen as opposed to something that is left up to chance at that point. So these two, I'd just say bad cards. Okay, next thing, Bubble Bringer. This is going down as one of the sauce cards, in my opinion. Why? Because it's like, it's kind of like a Gravity Bind. I'll say that right there, right? Like it stops level 4 or higher monsters from attacking. Cool, you don't have any level 4 monsters in your deck, so you don't have to worry about that. Your opponent does. Now, this is only from attacking directly, which kind of stinks. It'd be much cooler if it was just like Gravity Bind, in which it just stopped your level 4 or higher monsters from attacking you at all, right? That'd be kind of cool. You can't have everything in this world, but still, like, this is pretty good against what are the top decks right now. You have like Kashtira, you have Sword Soul, a bunch of, other than Sprite, everything kind of wants to attack you and it has a high level. With the exception of like link-based decks in Xyz decks, which, that's not incredibly great. So it doesn't have ult uses for that, but it also has the effect of reviving 2 of your level 3 or lower monsters with the same name from your grave, i.e. 2 Frog the Jams, 2 Turpirin, 2 Psychic Kappa, 2 Swap Frog, 2 Sprite Blues. If you, oh wait, no, those aren't water. It doesn't matter. It brings stuff back and it gets your plays going while also stalling for a turn. So it kind of does 2 things at once, and for that reason, I think that it has potential. And I honestly think that, like, given enough time and thought, I'd like to find a way to kind of check this out in like a paleo trap version of the deck, which I will kind of be working on for a bit here, because I don't know, seeing a lot of these traps makes me wonder if that is a possible or viable deck for the strategy, or at least as viable as you can get with this strategy. So I feel like there's some potential there. This is another, lovely floodgate, because they're fun, apparently. If a non-water monster is normal or special summoned, while you control a water monster, change that summon monster to defense position. Sweet, simple. It stops your opponent from basically attacking you. That's it. And that's pretty good, because anything that stops your opponent from killing you that turn in a deck like this is pretty good. Because you have a bunch of small monsters that you can't quite deal with at all times. But you have a bunch of small monsters, and they're mostly water monsters. So you can still summon things and attack, whereas your opponent cannot do that. Is it the best floodgate? Absolutely not. There are so much better things that you could play. But if you're going to the silly nature of this deck, I mean, I guess this works. You could just play like Threatening Roar or Waboku, but this also exists. It's something worth maybe considering, like, for just silliness and goofiness sake. If you want to be like, yeah, I play Floodgates, rock these 2 cards. You'll be the coolest person at locals. A major upset. So tribute 1 face-up attack position level 2 or lower monster. Return all level 7 or higher special summon monsters to the hand. I think that this is spice, mostly because of Kashtira. Because, like, let's say, oh no, Theosis, target Unicorn or target Fenrir. You just activate this bounce to hand. They don't get the search. Their monster gets bounced back, which, they'll be able to special summon it again. But at that point, their whole combo is thrown off the walls. So, like, I can see potential use of this in, like, this deck specifically, maybe in something like Sprites, because, once again, level 2s. Of course, in Sprites, the only level 2s you'll really have are your negates, because everything else will be an Xyz monster, which is a rank, or a link monster, which is, link, so you won't be able to use those. But is it worth it to play this in the deck? Maybe. So I don't know. I feel like possible secret tech card going into the Kashtira mashup. Who knows? Last thing, Super Poly, and so the reason I'm putting this here is because I wanted to talk about this stuff down here. Um, Obviously, these are a bunch of really bad fusion monsters from like the first few eras of the game, except for the most broken card of 2017. Let's give it here for that. Um, these aren't for like super poly targets. They're ready fusion targets, and yeah, I think actually just kind of ready fusion targets, instant fusion targets, which basically means, oh, you can summon them out with those cards and then do some link shenanigans. Um, Here's the thing, none of these are level 2. I know, shocking. And the thing is, like, yeah, they're all water, but they're not all aqua. Like, this is an aqua. This is an aqua, but like it does nothing for your deck. It's just an aqua. That's it. Um, let's see. This is an aqua. And then everything else is like fish, sea serpent, dinosaur, zombie. Um, and then this guy, which literally outside of Prank Kids doesn't do anything for this deck. Um, I mean, so like I don't know why you would want to use these outside of nostalgia factor. Because all it like yeah, you can use them for like link climbing shenanigans, but that means you're taking up valuable space in your extra deck to put in these cards that, unless you draw a ready fusion or instant fusion, they aren't gonna come out. And like for things like Ocean Snake and Aqua Dragon, or this guy, whatever he's called, you need ready fusion specifically. Um, so like these aren't gonna do anything, like they're not really gonna do anything other than take up space unless you draw ready fusion. So why would you put them there when you could just instead, I don't know, like play good extra deck monsters that you can go into with level 2 spams. Um, Similar ideas behind this Mermail Abyssalacia. I think that's how it's pronounced. The reason why you might think, oh, this is interesting, is because it gives your monsters attack, and it can also search out a Mermail monster. Problem, you're not really going to run Mermail monsters in this deck because they do nothing for your deck. They're all sea serpents and fishes and stuff like that, I believe. If there is an Aqua one out there, then I'm just kind of being dumb. But that's just, it does nothing for that. If you want something that'll give attack to your guys, why not just play like Mistar Boy? Because he does the same thing. He literally just does the same thing for the deck. You should just play that instead. Mud Dragon is the real reason why I have this here instead of Ready Fusion, Instant Fusion. This card is nuts in formats where this card is good. Like during tier format and like against like, I don't know, going second against sprites and junk like that. You just summon out this boy and it's like, oh my goodness, it's the freest thing in the world. Every single one of your normal monsters and your frogs, they can't be touched at all. You feel on top of the world. This is such a good thing to have when this is good. Right now, I don't think we're in a format where this is a particularly great card. So like I wouldn't recommend running this at the moment, but the second that this becomes good again, instantly play this. Throw this in this deck. It's so good. I love it. That being said, that's kind of all I have to say about these things. What's it called? Look at that. Not saving. Oh well. So now that I'm done talking about all this, I figured, hey, instead of just saying stuff, how about I show some stuff and then go through the my deck list for Frog the Jam and how it has developed over time. And I first wanted to talk with, this is I think the first deck that I really brought it to a locals with. And, you know, of course, this is, um, gotta get this guy in here. Um, okay, so uh, this is kind of like the ancient, very first rendition of this deck, with the idea being that, of course, you unexpected die, rescue rabbit, enchanting fitting room, and all this stuff to get out all the cards that you want to play. Forgot another thing. Sorry. Because this was in the original version. Looks more like that. You know, and the idea is that you have a bunch of normal monsters, and worst case scenario, you could go into Verte, send Ready Fusion, get out Dragoon, because it's good to have a boss monster in a deck that can brick as hard as this. You know, of course, Ronin Totem, great card. You know, Murray of Greed. Once again, this was back when I was running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 water monsters in my deck. This was always live, always did stuff. You know, right now it's not really the case because this guy's banned and you don't run as 3 of this guy anymore. But, you know, good card. If you run as many water monsters as that, I recommend this every day over, you know, even things like a Pot of Desires, maybe even like a Pot of Prosperity, because like this does more for this deck than either of those cards. You know, so that's why this was used. Dragoon, because like, oh, normal Link Spider, effective Link Spider, summon out, go into another Link Spider, go into that's 5th summon. They either Nibiru you, and then, oh, you trick them, you go into a 3rd one, summon out your guy, and do like plays with all of these cards, or they don't do anything, and then you activate this, you summon out Dragoon, and you just kind of pass, and you're good, right? You add Piercing the Darkness to that, and you like, what are they gonna do? They can't attack over this guy. He's a negate. He gains attack. He burns. You know, he gains even more honest like effect attack. So that's just pretty good. You know, like just a lot of good stuff here, basically. You have your out to any towers like monster, which I think during the time I was playing this, Adagnister was kind of in full swing. It was also DPE format, so like, you know, most people would see this and they'd be like, oh no, DPE's coming out, and you'd be like, haha, no, something possibly worse, you know. So that's kind of the first iteration of the deck. But of course, with the banning of Verte, I had to go into Format 2, right? And this was right when Sprite just came out. And I was a lucky goose because I was able to get 2 of these for like $5 each because everybody thought this was going to be the expensive one. So that felt great. So in this deck, you're running almost all the same Aqua monsters except for this guy's in inclusion. And the reason why is because this guy's broken in a deck like this. It's broken in things like Adamanspators for the same reason, but basically you discard to get an extra normal for a earth or a water monster, right? Look at that. Water, 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 earth. Water, 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 right? So like if you have this and this in hand, like you activate effect, you normal, and then you can revive him back. And then instantly go into a gigantic to get your swap frog online. He can send your Rodent, he can send any of these guys if you have this in hand. Like, it is so good. You know, this guy did so much to unlock the potential of this deck when he first came out, and this you know, this play only became broken because Gigantic Sprite was in the game. And oh my goodness, the moment that Gigantic Sprite came out, um, it kind of changed the whole way that I played this deck, because suddenly I didn't have to worry about, oh no, I have five normal monsters in my hand. I can't do anything. Um, you can do stuff. You can get your plays online. Like when I was running this version of the deck, I was able to like summon uh, 3 toads, 1 elf, right? This was probably the most broken version of the deck. I'm so sad that this is gone, because this did such wonders for it. Of course, I understand why he was gone. Sprite is a deck and a half. I will put it that way. So, that being said, I don't know. I really like this build of the deck. I think it's my favorite version of this deck. I wish that this came back for the sake of just letting me do my frog shenanigans. I don't even care about Sprite Elf anymore. This guy can go. I just want these guys. But that's how it kind of developed from phase 1 to phase 2. After that, we kind of have phase 3. This is I think almost exactly the version that I was running. I think some things are different. I don't entirely. I think I didn't have these. I don't remember what exactly I had, because I didn't think to look back at my deck list beforehand when I made this. But what's it called? Of course, this is the one that I got first place with. Back before Elf got the hit. Once again, rip Elf. Not as much as rip Ronan, because honestly, without Elf, you can still do some really nasty plays in this deck with Ronan. It's just kind of a slightly sad turn of events for that to happen. That being said, this is a pretty good version of the deck. It does some good stuff. It's really consistent, especially with the Sprite monsters. Because, now it's like, not only do you have to only rely on your normal monster support to get into your plays, you can rely on your starters. Or if you only open up like one of these guys and one of these, you have more plays than you used to. And you could get some really broken combo lines going off because of that. Of course, not everybody can afford Sprite, so like, if you can't do that, I'm sure are other ways to play this. I'd say more hand trap focused versions of this deck. Honestly, like, that's kind of what I have thought about doing going forward, but at this point, I'm still not sure. And I guess kind of like, this is kind of my thoughts right now for the current version of this deck. 41 cards, which is kind of, a little off, but the idea is like, it's pretty much just the same, but there's no Sprite Elf. Instead, I'm trying the card that I still think is kind of bad. In this deck, I think it's a little more passable, just because like, you're running so many 3-ofs. How are you not gonna get how are you not gonna get 3 of, or at least 2 of one of these in the grave to go into this play, especially if you have like Sprint now. Like, Sprint does more for this deck than I think I really thought until I was like preparing for this video, mostly because, let's say, Rescue Rabbit, go into 2 Frog the Jams, and oh no, they debarrier you, call Aqua or Xyz. Yeah, now you can't go into Xyz monsters. That kind of stinks. Okay, you just go into this, dump the other frog, and then if you have Tri-White, summon them back, you start link climbing. You start doing combos like that. And then of course you have all the sprite stuff to back it up. You have all these other things to back it up. And then here's something that I was thinking about. I'm not sure how great it is, but it's something that I wanted to kind of test out a bit, which is gamma. And the reason why I think that this might be useful is because things like Ash Blossom, really popular this format. Everybody's main decking it, it seems, and you have several cards that have their effects activate while you have nothing on the field, right? So if you activate this Ash, gamma, bam, you summon out one of these guys, and you have two materials to go into any of these monsters with. Or like, Rescue Rabbit, I really need this to go through. That way I can get my Toad play on or my Sprite play on. You activate the effect, it banishes for cost. So if they try to Ash that, once again, you do that. Now you have 4 monsters on the field to go into any of these with. And that only kind of increases if Sprite Starter, same thing. Enchanting Fitting Room, same thing. That's kind of the idea behind that. Now, of course, if you're playing, if you're playing this deck and they see Unexpected Die, they might think, Rika Sun Avalon, hit that, but probably not. Mostly because I don't think I know anybody who actually understands that deck outside of the people who play it. Sorry, Joe. So there's a chance that might be a dead card. So I was thinking about doing Lambda in this deck just to kind of classic original hand trap sprite build of the deck. That's kind of the thought there with this guy, because you can just kind of do that a lot at this moment. But it's a work in progress. We'll see how this turns out. And then I guess I mentioned this kind of in the middle of talking about all the jank cards and interesting cards that might have application in this deck. But what about a trap version of the deck? This is just right off the bat. I haven't put much thought into it yet, but I was thinking, how would a trap version of this deck work? I wanted to implement some of the stranger cards that I saw on the list, particularly a Major Upset. I wanted to do this as a replacement for Tri-White. Rise to Full Heights, that's just a very good card, so why not? And then Needlebug Nest is an idea to get the Paleos in the grave, but also get these in the grave to revive off this. This is not even close to a fully conceptualized version of this deck. It's just quick, let me throw something together and see how that might make sense within the context of the deck, right? So that's kind of, I don't know. There's probably a better way to go about doing this. I just wanted to throw something really quick to see how that might look. If you have any thoughts of I might do this instead or that instead, I'd say go for it, see how it works. You might notice I didn't do anything for the extra deck down here because I honestly am unsure as to what to do in that situation. But, that's all I can say for that. Otherwise, I don't really think I have any more that I have to say on the subject. I say as I've talked for, I don't even know how long I've been talking. Probably a long time. But, that's all I have for this. I hope that this, maybe it was insightful, but I think it was more of just a interesting thought process. Who knows? Maybe I'll break this up into 2 videos because it's a lot. Either ways, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for sticking with it all the way to the end if you managed to get to the end. If you didn't, I completely understand. This is a lot of cards to talk about. Most of them, me just saying I wouldn't use it, but this is a casual deck by nature. So please feel free to use whatever you want in your deck. This is supposed to be a fun deck. You're supposed to play this because you're like, man, I really want to play something silly. So if you saw anything here and you're like, I really want to try that out, go for it. Um, have fun with it. Anyways, have a good one. Have a good rest of your like day, night, evening, wherever you are, and God bless.